Welcome to Sacred Truth. There are moments when guidance is repeated, not because it was unclear, but because it was not yet received. This message invites reflection on listening with attention and obedience, reminding that discernment often comes quietly and missing it carries consequences. If this exploration helped you see Scripture as a living challenge rather than distant history, we invite you to continue with my channel. Support thoughtful engagement with Sacred Truth by liking this video. Like and subscribe for future reflections where scripture, history, and moral courage meet. And consider sharing this with someone wrestling with questions of faith, authority, or meaning. I am speaking to you again, not because you failed, not because you disappointed me, not because you missed your chance forever, but because this moment matters. There have been other times when you sensed my voice, moments when something within you paused, when your heart recognized a truth your mind tried to explain away. You felt it before. You knew it before. And still, you hesitated. Not out of rebellion, but out of fear. Fear of change. Fear of loss. Fear of stepping into something unfamiliar. So you told yourself you would listen later. When things were clearer. When circumstances were safer. When you felt more ready. But later quietly became delay. And delay slowly became distance. Not distance from me, but distance from peace. I am not reminding you of this to accuse you. I am reminding you because I am speaking again. And this time, you are not the same person you were before. You have lived enough. You have endured enough. You have learned enough to recognize the difference between noise and truth. My voice has not changed. It is still calm, still steady, still clear. What has changed is your capacity to hear it. Before, you wanted certainty. Now, you want alignment. Before, you asked for signs. Now, you are paying attention to direction. Before, you waited for permission. Now, you are ready for responsibility. This is not coincidence. This is preparation. You may feel the urgency in your spirit, not panic, but awareness. A knowing that something must not be ignored again. That is not pressure from me. That is clarity. I am not shouting at you. I am not chasing you. I am inviting you to listen with the maturity you have gained and the courage you have been forming. There are choices ahead of you that will shape more than circumstances. They will shape patterns, paths, cycles. Listening does not mean everything will suddenly be easy. But ignoring my voice will only lead you back to places you already outgrew. I am not calling you to relive the past. I am calling you to step forward with awareness, with trust, with intention. You do not need to rush, but you must not dismiss this moment. Because when I speak again, it is not to repeat myself endlessly. It is to offer direction before confusion returns. I am speaking now, and you know it. You have heard my voice before, not always in words, not always in prayer. Sometimes it came as unease, sometimes as a gentle resistance in your spirit, sometimes as a quiet question you could not ignore. You recognized it, but you did not always respond. Not because you were unwilling, but because listening required something you were not ready to release. At that time, you were still holding on to plans that felt safe, to identities that felt familiar, to expectations shaped by fear rather than faith. So when my voice came, you weighed it against comfort, against logic, against timing, and you chose delay. I did not withdraw. I did not turn away. I did not abandon you. I waited because I do not force alignment. I invite it. You continued walking. You learned through experience. You encountered resistance, disappointment, redirection. Some lessons came gently. Others came through loss. Not as punishment, but as preparation. Because some truths can only be understood after you have lived long enough to feel their weight. Now, when I speak, it lands differently. You no longer hear it as interruption. You hear it as recognition. You no longer ask, is this really God? You ask, what happens if I ignore this again? That question is wisdom. You have seen what happens when you move without listening. You have felt the cost of decisions made in haste, in fear, in self-protection. And you have also felt the peace even when things were uncertain, when you chose obedience over control. This is why I am speaking now. Not because you failed before, but because you are capable now. Capable of discernment, capable of restraint, capable of trusting direction without needing every detail explained. Before, you wanted reassurance. Now, you want truth. Before, you wanted outcomes. Now, you want alignment. Before, you asked me to bless your plans. Now, you are willing to release them. That is growth. And growth changes how my voice is received. I am not repeating myself because I was unclear. I am repeating myself because timing has matured. The same truth spoken too early feels like pressure, but spoken at the right moment, it feels like relief. This moment is different. Not because the message changed, but because you did. This time, it requires a response, not a reaction, not a promise made in emotion, not words spoken quickly to ease conviction. A response. There is a difference. A reaction fades when feeling fades. A response remains when the moment passes. I am not asking you to decide everything at once. I am not demanding perfection. I am not placing a burden on you, but I am asking you not to remain neutral, because neutrality is still a choice. In the past, you believed silence meant patience. You believed waiting meant wisdom. You believed doing nothing meant staying safe. But there are moments when waiting becomes avoidance, and silence becomes resistance, and safety becomes stagnation. This is one of those moments. You do not need to understand the entire path ahead. You do not need to know how every piece will unfold. You only need to decide whether you will continue walking as you have been or whether you will allow me to redirect you. My voice is not calling you into chaos. It is calling you out of confusion. There are areas of your life where you already know what needs to change. You have sensed it. You have named it privately. You have avoided it carefully. Not because you are dishonest, but because change costs something. It costs familiarity. It costs approval. It costs control. And control has felt like protection. But control has also exhausted you. You have carried responsibilities you were never meant to carry alone. You have tried to manage outcomes that were never placed in your hands. I am not asking you to abandon responsibility. I am asking you to release authority. There is a difference. Responsibility is stewardship. Authority belongs to me. When you confuse the two, you begin to live under pressure instead of peace. That pressure has been speaking to you through anxiety, through restlessness, through a sense that something is misaligned. Those were not signs of failure. They were signals. Signals that it was time to listen again. And now that you are listening, a response is required. Not dramatic, not rushed, but intentional. A response that says, I will no longer ignore what I already know. A response that says, I will stop postponing obedience in the name of timing. A response that says, I trust you enough to move before everything feels secure. This does not mean everything will become easy, but it does mean things will become clear. Clarity does not come from certainty. It comes from alignment. And alignment begins when you respond. There are things you keep avoiding, not because you do not see them, but because you see them too clearly. You know which conversations you delay, which decisions you postpone, which habits you defend even while they drain you. You tell yourself it is not the right time, that circumstances will improve first, that clarity will come later. But avoidance does not create clarity. It only extends confusion. You have learned how to stay functional without being fully aligned. You have learned how to move forward while carrying quiet resistance inside. Others may not notice. You still show up, you still perform, you still appear steady. But inside, something remains unsettled. That unrest is not condemnation, it is direction. I am not exposing what you avoid to shame you. I am revealing it because avoidance is costing you more than obedience ever would. What you avoid continues to demand attention. It drains energy, It steals focus. It quietly governs decisions. You may believe you are postponing change, but in reality, change is already happening. It is just happening without alignment. Avoidance always has consequences. Not because I punish delay, but because truth does not disappear when it is ignored. You have outgrown some things you keep trying to carry forward: relationships, patterns, expectations, roles that once fit but now restrict movement. You sense this. That sense of "this no longer works" is not dissatisfaction, it is transition. And transition requires courage. You are not weak for feeling resistance. You are human. But you are also capable of more honesty than you have allowed yourself. Avoidance keeps you busy but not fulfilled. It keeps you occupied but not at peace. You do not need to confront everything at once, but you do need to stop pretending that what you are avoiding will resolve itself. I am not asking you to force outcomes. I am asking you to face truth. Because once truth is faced, it loses its power to intimidate. Avoidance magnifies fear. Alignment diminishes it. What you keep avoiding is not meant to destroy you. It is meant to free you. And I am with you as you face it. You may wonder why. My voice feels stronger now. Not louder, not harsher, but clearer. It is not because I have changed my tone. It is because you have reached a place where clarity is no longer optional. Earlier, you were still learning, still discovering, still gathering experiences that would shape discernment. At that time, direction could wait, redirection could be gentle, correction could be subtle. But growth has brought you here, and with growth comes responsibility. My voice feels stronger now because the cost of ignoring it has increased. Not because I will punish you, but because you know better. You are no longer unaware. You are no longer guessing. You are no longer simply reacting to life. You are discerning. And discernment changes everything. What once felt like a suggestion now feels like instruction. What once felt optional now feels necessary. This is not pressure. This is readiness. I do not speak with urgency unless delay will harm you. I do not call for attention unless distraction has become dangerous. You have been standing at a threshold longer than you realize. A threshold between familiarity and obedience. Between comfort and calling. Between what you know and what you are becoming. My voice feels stronger because remaining where you are will require more compromise than moving forward. You can no longer unhear what you have heard. You can no longer unknow what you now see. And trying to return to old patterns will only create deeper tension. This tension is not a threat. It is a signal that transition has already begun. I am not rushing you, but I am making it clear that neutrality is no longer safe. You were not meant to stay undecided. You were not meant to live divided. You were not meant to carry the weight of constant inner conflict. My voice feels stronger because alignment is closer than you think, and clarity always increases just before movement begins. When you listen, things do not suddenly become perfect, but they do become ordered. Listening does not remove difficulty. It removes confusion. You may expect immediate answers, clear outcomes, a sense of certainty that eliminates doubt. That is not how listening works. Listening reorders your inner world before it rearranges your outer one. The first thing that changes is not circumstances, it is weight. You stop carrying what was never yours to manage. You stop rehearsing outcomes you cannot control. You stop negotiating with fear and silence. Listening quiets the noise that has kept you mentally restless. You begin to recognize what matters and what has only felt urgent. When you listen, your decisions slow down, but your direction sharpens. You no longer feel compelled to explain everything. You no longer feel pressured to please everyone. You no longer feel responsible for outcomes that belong to me. This is not passivity. It is trust in motion. Listening does not mean you will never struggle again. It means struggle will no longer define you. You may still face resistance from others, from systems, from expectations that no longer fit, but you will not face them alone. When you listen, you move with me instead of ahead of me. That alignment changes the way effort feels. Effort becomes intentional, not frantic. Work becomes purposeful, not exhausting. Waiting becomes active, not anxious. Listening creates space for peace to settle before answers arrive. It teaches your soul how to remain steady, even when circumstances remain unresolved. And that steadiness is what allows clarity to emerge. Not all at once, not dramatically, but consistently. Listening does not promise ease. It promises direction. And direction is what you have been missing. You are not too late. I know that thought has crossed your mind. Quietly, persistently. You have wondered if you waited too long, if you missed the right moment, if delay has already cost you what cannot be recovered. That fear is understandable, but it is not truth. Timing in your life is not measured by speed. It is measured by readiness. You were not late. You were being formed. What felt like delay was often preparation happening beneath the surface. There were things you needed to learn before you could carry what is ahead. Boundaries you needed to develop, discernment you needed to gain, strength you needed to build without realizing it. If you had moved earlier, you would have moved without the clarity you now possess. If you had stepped forward sooner, you might have carried fear into places that require faith. Nothing has been wasted. Not the waiting, not the struggle, not even the moments you regret. I do not redeem only success, I redeem process. You have not fallen behind my plan. You have been walking within it even when you felt unsure. What matters now is not how long it took you to arrive here. What matters is that you are here, listening, aware, willing. The door's not closing. It is opening. But it opens forward, not backward. You are not being asked to relive past decisions. You are being invited to make a new one, with wisdom you did not have before, with humility that has been earned, with trust that has been tested. You are not behind. You are positioned. And what is ahead requires exactly the person you have become. This is the turning point. Not because everything suddenly changes, but because you do. There are moments in life that quietly divide before and after. They are not always marked by events. Sometimes they are marked by decisions no one else sees. This is one of those moments. You are standing at a place where continuing as before will cost you more than moving forward ever could. You already feel it. The restlessness is no longer tolerable. The inner conflict is no longer manageable. The sense of something must change is no longer avoidable. That is not pressure from me. That is alignment drawing near. I am not asking you to be fearless. Courage does not require absence of fear. It requires obedience in the presence of it. This turning point is not about perfection. It is about direction. You do not need to know every step. You only need to stop walking away from what you already know. When you choose to listen now, you are not choosing comfort. You are choosing coherence. Life begins to make sense not because it becomes predictable, but because it becomes ordered. Fear no longer speaks the loudest. Urgency no longer controls you. Old patterns no longer define you. This is not the end of struggle, but it is the end of confusion. Stay with me here. Do not rush past this moment to return to familiar noise. There is a stillness here that you have rarely allowed yourself to remain in. Not emptiness, not silence for silence's sake, but presence. You have spent much of your life preparing, planning, anticipating what might happen next. Always thinking ahead, always bracing yourself, always trying to stay one step ahead of disappointment. That way of living once helped you survive, but it is no longer how you are meant to live. Survival shaped you, but it is not your destination. This moment is asking you to release the posture of defense and step into the posture of trust. Trust does not mean you stop caring. It means you stop controlling. Trust does not mean you become passive. It means you become aligned. You have confused alignment with loss of autonomy. You feared that listening would mean shrinking. But listening does not reduce you. It clarifies you. You do not lose yourself. When you walk with me, you find yourself the version of you that no longer reacts from fear, that no longer needs to prove worth, that no longer confuses urgency with importance. That version of you is emerging now, not suddenly, not dramatically, but steadily. That is why my voice matters in this season, because what comes next will require discernment more than speed. It will require integrity more than visibility. It will require faithfulness when no one is watching, and courage when others do not understand your choices. You cannot carry what is ahead with the patterns you used before. That is why I am inviting you to listen now before movement begins. You will be tempted to doubt this moment. Later, when the emotion fades, when routine returns, when pressure speaks louder than peace, you may wonder if you imagine this clarity, if you exaggerated the urgency, if you were too sensitive. That is why I am telling you now, do not measure truth by intensity. Measure it by resonance. Truth settles. It does not rush. Truth remains, even when feeling subsides. When you look back on this moment, you may not remember every word, but you will remember how still your spirit felt when you stopped resisting. That stillness is not fragile. It is strong, and it will return to you whenever you choose alignment again. You are not required to feel inspired every day. You are required to remain honest. When uncertainty comes, do not ask, do I still feel it? Ask instead, what do I know now? That I did not know before? That delay has a cost. That avoidance drains you. That peace follows obedience, not certainty. That knowledge will guide you even when emotion does not. What comes next is not what you fear. You fear loss. You fear instability. You fear disappointing others. You fear stepping into something you cannot control. But what comes next is not chaos. It is clarity. Some things will fall away, not because they are taken from you, but because they no longer belong with you. Some connections will loosen. Some expectations will change. Some paths will quietly close, not as punishment, but as protection. You will not be left empty-handed. You will be left unburdened. What remains will feel lighter, truer, more sustainable. You will begin to notice that you are no longer forcing peace. Peace begins to accompany you, not because everything is resolved, but because your inner world is no longer divided. That is the gift of listening. I am not done with you. Do not confuse this turning point with an ending. It is a beginning, but not the kind that overwhelms, the kind that steadies. There is more ahead of you, more depth, more influence, more responsibility. But it will not arrive all at once. It will unfold at the pace your soul can carry. You do not need to rush toward it. You only need to remain aligned. I will continue to guide you, not always with explanations, often with peace, not always with answers, often with direction. And when you feel uncertain again, because you will return to this truth, I am with you. I am speaking. I am guiding. I am steady. Do not ignore my voice this time. Not because you are afraid to lose something, but because you are ready to gain what you were always meant to carry. Remain with me and walk forward